Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Phoenix Business Radio X. I am your guest host today, Kendra Maples. Normally, I'm hosting a podcast all about company culture, but it overflows into what we're going to talk about today when we're talking about good business. I am so excited to be in the studio today with Lisa Swanson. Lisa, you are the CEO of, and now that I'm looking at it again, I'm like, mobile. Oh my gosh.
Mobile One Docs.
Yes. I looked at it with my notes and my dashes and things, and I'm like, that's not right. Mobile One Docs. I am really excited to have just you and I in the studio. Sometimes we're filled with the mics and the people and the conversation, which is all great. But sometimes we get a little carried away. We don't really get to dive into one person in particular and one company in particular. So I'm really excited to learn about you and Mobile One Docs and share what you're doing with everyone else. So let's jump in. Tell me a little bit about you, maybe your background, and then we'll dive more into the company.
Thank you, Kendra. Thanks for having me here. I'm so
Yeah.
excited. I am a nurse practitioner. I still practice clinically. I have been involved in healthcare for about 25 years and started out in the early days, as a nurse and worked in a variety of different settings. I founded Mobile One Docs 2016, and I still run it as CEO. It's very interesting that, it's changed and evolved over the years in terms of, technology and patient care. So it's very exciting to, utilize my background and continue to strive to, make a difference in the community.
Yeah. And I love that you are a nurse practitioner. My mom was a nurse and she was a medical assistant. And so I always have a spot in my heart and compassion for what you guys do. I don't know if I have the patience for some of the things that you guys do. So I admire the work that you do. So tell me a little bit more about Mobile One Docs, how it started when you started this in 2016. Like, where did this come from?
Sure. I always have been involved in home based primary care since 2010. So when I completed my nurse practitioner program, I felt that it was still important to work in the community. I had done so in the past, and that's where I wanted to be. And I felt that at that time, it was important to address the needs of those individuals that are homebound, that have difficulty getting into traditional healthcare offices. So we embarked on, creating that program back in the day, and with that, it's grown in terms of acceptance, and of course, with technology, and developed into telehealth over the years as well. So it's pretty exciting to be involved in a field that you want to be in and to, have that passion and grow.
Yeah. Did you have anyone in your life that was maybe homebound that kind of started this? Or where did some of this inspiration come from?
Yeah, certainly. Back in the day when I was working in home health and hospice, I really enjoyed, the team collaboration of working together, and taking that to present that as an offering. And also, I do have elderly parents too, and so now, they are dealing with, their health situations and how to honor their wishes and where they can age in place where they want to. And that gives me insight and continues to inspire me, and see how they adapt as well. And so, cute story, when I finally did get them set up, with a mobile in-house medical provider, they called me and they were excited because at first they didn't know what to expect. And then they said, "Oh, so this is what you do." I said, "Yeah, this is?" And they're like, "Oh, this is fantastic." So it worked out well for them, and I'm glad.
I love that. And I love sometimes family doesn't understand what we do, how we do it. My mom's the same way. She's slowly figuring out the things that I do for work. And she's like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So I love that now they get to see and witness and be part of what you're doing. Now, you mentioned the technology piece and
Mhm.
how technology has affected and supported what you're doing in this space. Tell me a little bit
Yeah.
more about this.
Yeah, well, when I first started in home-based primary care, I mean, we were still charting on paper for one. And so, just from that aspect alone, just, as we evolved into, great EMRs that can capture, fantastic data, et cetera, so that's a huge progress. And also, of course, with the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
The seniors before then, weren't, exposed to, telehealth technology. And so what we're finding since then is, that there's much greater acceptance, with that population and their caregivers and families.
Yeah. And before the pandemic, was this because I'm thinking we say
Yeah,
pre-COVID, post-COVID.
right.
It's a new timestamp for things. Prior to the pandemic and all of that, was this a platform? Was this an opportunity that was as big as I would think of it as now, right? Now to offer that opportunity for them to stay home, right? During the
Yeah.
pandemic, that was what people needed. So tell me about that transition of kind of pre-pandemic,
Yeah.
post-pandemic.
Yeah, certainly was a big change. Pre-pandemic, our business model was to visit patients in their homes.
Mhm.
And even myself, we would drive to the patient's home, and we have the time to be able to sit there, for up to an hour at a time to really, establish a connection with the patient,
Mhm.
family, kind of take a look at their resources, their home setting, and taking that back to the team to see how we can work together for
Mhm.
them. And so with the pandemic, of course, that changed. We actually became busier
Mhm.
in many ways. One, we were able to offer, monoclonal infusions in the home setting at that time. So we had to kind of ramp up and change gears pretty quickly. I was thankful that we were able to do that, with great flexibility and to, help make a difference. And also, in terms of telehealth too, that burgeoned, of
Mhm.
course, making us a lot busier. But now, we still feel that it's important to have those in-person visits, back to our core model. And patients and families like that too. They want to be able to, have someone visit in the home and take that
Mhm.
time as well.
Yeah. And that time and that connection piece,
Hmm.
tell me about that when they are getting their visits, right? And you said sometimes they're there for an hour. I mean, I know when my mom was a medical assistant and she was visiting homes doing some similar work, she really connected with these folks. I mean,
Hmm.
I knew all their names and she'd tell me about the day. And, it was an extension of our family, all of her folks that she was visiting. So tell me about that when it comes to your team, when they're making these visits. How many people are they visiting in a day? How much time do they really get to, spend and connect? Are these visits that they're making, are they having the same person visit each time? Tell me a little bit more about
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So our model is visiting patients in their home setting mostly, and
Mhm.
so that means their private home. And even though we do service, larger assisted facilities, but I would say, that's the main core line is to see our patients in the home. And so we, as a team, of course, everybody from intake, they get to know the referral source pretty well.
Mhm.
The families, they have, a pretty intense conversation in the beginning of, services and how we can help. And of course, then it goes over, to our scheduling department because we want to make sure that, we are able to schedule timely and with the right provider for our, different programs that we have. And so once we are able to send the provider out, we want to maintain that relationship and ongoing care. So we make sure that there are follow-up visits and to keep them on schedule. And so with that, we build up trust and a relationship that as we work together as a team, it's not just only the provider or the care coordinator or the scheduler, but all of us together, we can, help act as the center of their hub for primary care, for referrals, and also as they transition through their disease process too, because many of our patients have chronic conditions, multiple, and they're very ill in the home and they need a lot of support.
When you've mentioned a couple of times the work that you do with the telemed, and you're obviously partnering with other organizations and other healthcare providers. Tell me a little bit about that when it comes to, collaborating with some of these traditional healthcare providers.
Sure, absolutely. So, primary care for home-based setting, we work together really well with home health agencies, and so it's a back and forth. Oftentimes, they might need physical therapy in the home or a home health nurse to come in just to monitor their condition for a period of time. And also, there might be a time when they're appropriate for hospice services. So, we work with different agencies in the community as well, to help the patient, the family, wherever they are in their illness. In addition to our, traditional primary care providers, we work with them too. So sometimes we get patients as they're discharged from the hospital, and we're able to see them right away within a day or two upon discharge. And when they get stronger, they can go back to their community primary care provider. And perhaps maybe they're unable to because of their condition, and they might need us a little bit longer. So we're there for them. What in terms of whatever they need, and then we support the care coordination and collaboration with everybody.
How does that communication process work, right? Because there's so many pieces and partners, and you guys are the ones that are there in person, but there's a lot of these other providers that are involved. Who's communicating all of this?
Yeah, that is always the challenge, right? Because there are a lot of moving pieces and parts, but we have a dedicated staff, highly trained, and in our system, we make lots of notes, a lot of notations, especially for our referral sources. So we keep a strong connection with them to update them, and each partner they have different set of workflows or requirements, and so we work with everyone, and we try to capture what those needs are first, and then to make sure we accommodate them. And so that's the beauty of being able to work with so many different partners, different markets, different settings, and it's very rewarding.
Yeah. And you mentioned your team as well. You've got all these different partners and your team. How big, what does your team look like?
Yeah, so we're actually in Phoenix and Las Vegas, Reno. Up in Reno, we actually have a on-site clinic for the downtown homeless shelter.
Oh, wow.
So we're pretty busy there. We also service rural areas such as Bullhead City, Kingman.
Okay.
And so we're always looking to accept new challenges, grow. We have the ability to.
Okay. With the on-site, you said you have an on-site in Vegas to focus on that downtown homeless population.
That's in Reno.
Oh, in Reno. Okay. So with that, how did that come about? Because that's a little bit different, right? It's not necessarily visiting in home, but that connection and helping the community and the homeless population. Tell me about this. I love that you have that location that has a little bit different of a focus.
Right. So we were approached by a payer that worked closely with the county
Okay.
and to see if we were interested. And so, of course, I said, why not? Right.
Yeah.
So I went there myself in the beginning and just to, see what the needs are.
Mhm.
And we just grew organically from that. And so, main thing right now is, collecting data and, seeing, what, cost of care and how we can make a difference and improve care and delivery in terms of primary care,
Mhm.
as opposed to maybe unnecessary ER visits where we can help on site first. So that's what we're taking a look at right now, and the response has been amazing. I mean, I get letters sent in
Yeah.
from them and saying what a difference that having us there. It's very helpful for them, and yeah, it's amazing.
I love that. And you said that you were approached. When did that location start? How
Mm.
long has that been there?
I would say about a year and a
Okay.
half ago. Mhm.
Are there any goals for duplicating this in Arizona?
We like to. Yeah, that's in the works.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I know that we even just recently we had a couple of folks in the studio, um, Eric Sperling and Robin Reed, talking about some of their initiatives with focusing on the homeless population and how to help and improve. And so I definitely know that through the studio we have some folks that I'm sure would be on board if this was something that you wanted to try and bring to Arizona.
Oh,
It's
fantastic.
definitely a community, an area that we need to focus on out here too.
Yes.
So I love that you're doing it in Reno. You're getting all the bugs out of the way, maybe figuring out, the quirks and how it works. And
Right.
then, absolutely there's a space for that here
There
that we
is.
can support. On that note of, kind of building and growing and learning, tell me about some of, it can be the good, the bad, the ugly, but tell me some of the stories, the growth areas where you've, had to overcome some challenges with this business and the space you're in, or maybe even that particular project, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because here we are getting back to our pandemic era. Pre-pandemic time, we were always remote.
Okay.
So our staff, we work remotely.
Yeah.
Our remote staff supports our field providers.
Okay.
And so that really didn't change much afterwards. And we're very versed with dealing with remote workers, and our staff really enjoy it too because they're able to have more of a balance,
Yeah.
and um, we have a great team. Uh, Other challenges, I would say always, of course, recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as our population is aging and more, how do we keep up with that?
Mm-hmm.
So we are aware of that, and actively looking at ways, to help support that need.
Mm-hmm. And when you say recruiting, because it's both ends, right? Finding the folks that you need to serve and support if they are
Mhm.
this aging population, but then also recruiting for folks to join your team, right?
Right. Correct.
So when you are looking for somebody to recruit to join your team, is there anything in particular that you're looking for? Or what does that perfect candidate look like for you?
Yeah, definitely to have a passion to care for individuals and their families in the home setting, right?
Yes.
And because it is different from your traditional clinic
Hmm.
setting, and also being able to drive. Of course, many of us have worked in home health in the past, and we're used to driving, and so that's not a problem. But uh, and also, having, just the patient's ability to have shared decision conversations with patients,
Hmm.
caregivers, in a different setting. We are open to training, absolutely, and especially training new grads.
Hmm.
We've had a few that have done phenomenally well and are still with us and love it.
Nice.
So, we are open to that and feel that training is very important. And even for those that, have had experience to still, learn and adapt, and especially with technology changes to help support that too.
Yeah. And I love that you say the family piece, because it definitely is not just the one patient you're visiting. It's
Right.
it's the whole family, and sometimes they're a little spicier than maybe the patient you're working with. I've
Yeah.
had my mom come home numerous times, and there's some other family member that's there, and she's like, "I'm just trying to take care of my patient."
Yeah.
So being able to have that flexibility with communicating with everybody, right? The patient,
Hmm.
the family, the providers, all of those pieces together. Absolutely. I see that so important. Um, are there any other gaps that you see in kind of healthcare? And obviously, we're making a lot of progression in the space that you're in, right? And especially today with the flexibility and being remote, like you said, being able to have that flexible schedule, drive to these different shifts. But are there other areas that you see as maybe gaps in this where we can still grow, and where maybe you guys need support as well?
Sure. I think, of course, awareness,
Mm,
because we still encounter families that come to us and mention, "Oh, we've never heard of this before,"
yeah.
and others have. So I think, being able to, get the word out more, so that, patients and their families are aware of the services that are involved in the home. So
Yeah.
many of them are just used to, the traditional, and there comes a time where that might not be possible, and it's, taxing for the patient physically to go.
Mhm.
And also increasing accessibility, especially in remote areas.
Mm.
That's always going to be an ongoing challenge.
When you say accessibility in some of these remote areas, do you mean more of getting this service out into these remote areas, right? Just
Yes,
getting the actual human out there to help them?
correct.
Okay. What are some areas for that accessibility that you think could improve, that could grow?
Yeah, I certainly think, of course, telehealth option,
Mhm.
but then also having maybe, either more of medical assistants, nurses, other delivery providers that can go out to the home to connect,
Mhm.
with the physician, nurse practitioner, telehealth,
Mhm.
to assist in those remote rural areas.
Yeah, for sure. I worked for Wounded Warrior Project in the past, and so that was a constant thing that came up. Was some of our veterans lived in much more
Yeah.
rural areas, and how do you get them the accessibility to the VA? If it's not the VA, then what is it, right? It's something like what you guys are doing. It's some other provider that can be in person and give them that support. And it was a constant conversation on that accessibility side. So I I hope that in the future we see this shift a little more, because it's, like I said, it's been a conversation for 10, 15 years already
Yeah.
that we're still working on. What are some other areas that you see as far as, the future of healthcare? Like, where do you see this growing into and expanding even further?
Yeah, I think, of course, technology is going to change always. And I think looking at the different generations too,
Mm,
because not only have we been taking care of the elderly, but then what about the newer generation and how they view healthcare and interpret healthcare? Of course, they're more savvy with technology and how they're getting information. So, how do we adapt, to that generation?
mhm.
And providing them the high quality tools that they need.
Yeah, the technology piece now. I mean, some of these students, it's crazy the stuff that they can do, and it changes, I swear, on a weekly basis. And especially, from where you've come with this, I remember you were talking about when you fill out the reports, right? When you leave your patient. And it used to be a paper, a
Hmm.
handwritten sheet that you wrote down your whole, assessment, everything that happened. You turned in your sheet of paper, right? But now technology already has streamlined some of this. And it's only going to continue
Yes.
to grow. So if we can tap into it, right?
Hmm.
And especially this younger generation that just they're in it. right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. And it's amazing the quality of apps that are out there. And,
yeah.
to even look at it, a skin rash, and they can, use an app for that or whatever
Right.
it may be. And so to know, what they have access to, and to be
Yeah.
aware of that, so that way you can guide them appropriately as a practitioner or provider.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, like the skin rash thing. I just scanned a picture of a flower on a hike the other day and we knew what the flower was in like zero point 0.4 seconds. But yeah,
Yeah.
that technology in this space is going to make some huge shifts, some huge growth. That's awesome. Um, what else? I mean, I want to make sure I'm diving into some of the questions that I think to ask. Obviously, I'm not in the medical field, right? So I want to make sure I'm highlighting some of these parts. What else do you want to make sure we bring up in this conversation that I might not ask, not having a medical background? I just tap into my mom's medical background.
Sure. I think just to bring an awareness
Okay.
to the consumers that, the
Mhm.
services that are available are very wide and varied. And so not only
Yeah.
mobile primary care, but we can also, connect with palliative care. In fact, we have, palliative care providers, wound care specialists in the home. We can connect the patient with, say, mobile podiatry or
Okay.
behavioral health. There's so many different facets to, help care for that patient in their home setting. And so it's wonderful, to see the availability of all these services, but also to increase the awareness.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. And then the last thing I kind of want to dive into is you. You mentioned in the very beginning when you said this, you said it started in 2016, right?
Mhm.
And you said how you were doing it, but you kind of made it seem like this isn't the day-to-day. You're not making these home visits. So tell me about you. Tell me about Lisa. What are you doing?
Well, I wear many hats still,
Yes.
and I love it.
I picked up on that.
And yeah, I started out, purely clinical, and going into the homes, and that's, it's just so important for me to still have that connection.
Yeah.
And so I really enjoy, and I try to do that still and serve as backup for, our team. And I think, as I continued my journey, I had to learn a lot of, different roles, especially in terms of business, right?
Mhm.
And so that's been a great experience. I've had mentors in the
Mm.
past and even now, which I feel it's so important to connect and make sure that you have those
Mhm.
to lean upon, and
Oh,
to
yes.
learn from, and somebody that you can talk to about your experiences or struggles or challenges, and get the inspiration. So I feel that that's very important. I've been, very thankful to have, those individuals to help. And, it's lifelong learning. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the coaches and the mentor piece is so important, especially like you, right? If you're going from being in the medical space to then creating a company around it, it's a shift, it's a new area. I've done something similar, not in the medical space, right? But being in a field and then stepping out to create a business around it.
Yeah.
And tapping into those coaches and those mentors is so vital. I have had a few conversations about this lately. I've referred to it as your own personal board of directors,
Right.
right? The same way you would have a doctor, right? You have your primary care, you have
Hmm.
your doctor, you have your dentist, you have your therapist, you have your coach, you have your own personal board. So I love that you mentioned that. Do you have different mentors that you've had over time, or do you have any that have kind of stuck with you along this journey?
Oh, certainly over time and
Yeah.
in different areas,
Mhm.
whether it's, finance or, clinical, or,
Oh,
to
yes.
draw upon different areas, different skill sets, and, uh, yeah, and reading lots of books, and yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
That is my favorite, and audiobooks. That's
Yes.
how I get through more books nowadays. And then by the end of the month when I say, "Oh, I read 8 books," everyone's really impressed. Really, it's just because I drive a lot. So
Yes.
I'm listening to audiobooks. I love this. what, as we kind of start to wrap up the conversation, I know a big thing that we want to make sure we bring to everyone is the awareness piece, right?
Mhm.
If you had an ask, we talked a little bit about recruiting as well, right? If you have an ask to our listeners and our viewers, what else would you throw out there as far as support, and ask that you have for your company and for you and what you're growing?
Sure. So, to the listeners, if you know of anybody that might need some help, maybe a neighbor that you know that is, aging and may be struggling with some needs, and maybe have a conversation. Also, with their friends or family to find out if they need any help.
Mhm.
That's how we get our calls in,
Yeah.
and they have different questions, and whatever it is, just call, and we can. Try to vet it out and see, if we can't help, maybe we can steer them in the direction where they need to go,
Yeah.
or maybe we can help.
Yeah. I'm extremely thankful that you just said that, because a lot of times, at least I've seen with neighbors and friends, is you have, maybe that older neighbor, and you don't really know if they have family, and you don't really know what support they have, right? And if
Right.
no one else is making those calls to give them that support, then they might not get it.
Yes.
We have an older gentleman who is a neighbor of ours, and his wife passed away, his wife of
Mm.
70
Oh,
years. And so, yeah, so this beautiful older gentleman, she passed away. He's 88,
mm.
and he really doesn't have the family. So we've
Yeah.
taken dinners over and things like that. But I'm glad that you say, just to make that call, right? To
Right.
to share that support, because they might not know these resources are out there. They're just trying to survive.
Mhm.
And so really making it a community effort to have our eyes open on, some of our neighbors like that might need that help. So when you say make the call, so say I'm the neighbor, I see this gentleman next door, he needs some help. Who do I call? What do I say when I'm reaching out to your team?
Sure. So you can definitely call our phone number anytime,
Okay.
24/7,
Okay.
and that's 888-709-8721, or go to our website, which is mobile1docs.com, and it's all one word with one spelled out, and you can connect that way as well.
Yes. One word all spelled out. That's why when I read it, I can't I can't. I haven't gone through my coffee yet. Um Anything else? I want to make sure that we capture, really what you guys are doing and the growth that you have in the community. Is there anything else that you want to make sure we get to everyone?
I just really feel strong about making that call
Yeah.
because every case is different. Every person and their situation is different.
Yeah.
And so we want to be able to personalize that and help them individually with what they need.
I love that. And so the website and the phone number, is that the best place for folks to reach out? Maybe if they want to reach you and learn more, or if maybe they're hearing that you're recruiting people and they want to join your team, is that the best way for them to reach out as well?
There's also info@mobile1docs.com.
Perfect.
So if they want to shoot an email, absolutely. We would love to hear from potential individuals that might want to work with us
Yeah.
in any capacity. So, yes.
Awesome. And then if they want to reach out to you in particular, is that still the best way,
Oh,
or
sure.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Lisa, I am so excited that we got to chat. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes we have a room full of people and the conversation, goes in so many different directions. It's nice to be able to have the conversation and focus on one person, one business, and really get everything across. So I appreciate you coming into the studio today. So again, that was Lisa Swanson, the CEO of Mobile One Docs. Thank you. And to everyone else that's listening and joining us today, thanks for joining us in our Phoenix Business Radio X studio here in Tempe, Arizona. Some media leans left, some leans right, but we lean business.